Welcome to the Exploring Neurodiversity podcast for adults who support neurodivergent children. Whether you're an allied health professional, medical professional, education professional, or a parent of a neurodivergent child, you are welcome here. This podcast is recorded on the Aboriginal lands of the Gadigal and Bidjigal people. I acknowledge the traditional owners, elders past and present, and I extend my acknowledgement to any Aboriginal and First Nations people listening in. I'm Adina from Play, Learn, Chat. I'm an autistic AuDHDer, speech therapist, professional educator, speaker, and I also support neurodivergent business owners in my other business, Neurodivergent Business Coaching and Consulting. I'm obsessed with creating a world where neurodivergent people are understood, embraced, supported, and celebrated. A world where we neurodivergent people can understand ourselves and thrive in a life aligned with our individual strengths, wants, and needs. On the Exploring Neurodiversity podcast, you'll get my perspectives and conversations with my neurodivergent friends, all about how adults can best support neurodivergent children in our lives. I bring a neurodiversity affirming approach and indeed a human affirming approach to the support that we all provide for neurodivergent kids in our lives. Let's dive in. Hello, Christina. Welcome to the Exploring Neurodiversity podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me, Adina. I am so excited to be on this episode with you and share a bit of my story about understanding my neurodivergence and in return, really coming into my own. So yeah, I'm ready to get into it.
We're going to have so much important discussion. I can't wait to hear and learn from you and chat with you. So Christina Schmidt is an AuDHDer, an autistic AuDHDer, multiply dialectal, multicultural Black woman. She lives, works, plays and creates on the unceded lands of Wurundjeri country in Naarm, Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. And I am on the lands of the Gadigal and Bidjigal people in Sydney, Australia. Born in the US, Christina has spent the majority of her adult life overseas in Austria and now Australia. I feel like you're working your way through the alphabet.
A little bit.
She works with pediatric and adult clients. She specializes in neuroaffirming practice, and my goodness, what an amazing take and depth of understanding she has, which she's going to share with us about this area of practice. And yeah, she works a lot with AAC, augmentative and alternative communication, Gestalt language processing, a bit of orofacial. I always say this one wrong. Orofacial myofunctional therapy. I got it. Did I get it?
Got it.
Yes. The real tongue twister. And does some feeding support as well. Social justice advocacy is deeply intertwined with her work due to her strong justice sensitivity. I might say not only due to that, maybe, I think due to, just being an amazing human who thinks and cares deeply as well. I wonder.
Thank you. Yeah, 100%.
And Christina's passionate about helping people discover and embrace their unique strengths, sharing them with the world in the ways and at times that they feel ready. What a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, thank you. It feels that way when I'm supporting people. Yeah.
I think that
just feels right.
That little last bit, that's like at that point where you feel ready. We're not thrusting ourselves and our support at people where when they are ready for it, we can support and be there.
I think it's so important.
So Christina runs Free to Be Me speech therapy, which is such a beautifully named practice as well. I get very opinionated about people's business names. I know everyone thinks very hard about them, and some I love and some not so much. And the moment I heard yours, I thought, you have nailed it.
And it just came to me. Really, it felt right. It's like how I transitioned from working solely with pediatric clients to also now working with adults. And I used to really stray away from adults because I hadn't really found my niche. But now that I work with other late diagnosed autistic and AuDHDer clients, I just feel like in a way it's actually like my calling. I can go into the session and it just feel and at the end of the session I just reflect back and go, wow, that happened. And it just happens so naturally. So with Free to Be Me speech therapy, I just thought, first of all, I want to feel free to be me. And I really want the same for the people that I provide the services to. It's really free to be me and free to be seen, free to be heard, free to be understood exactly as you are, come as you are. So Yeah, I'm so happy that it just came to me and I felt like, that's it, free to be me speech therapy. There we go.
I love that you see it from both aspects, as it's almost the cue to you to remind yourself to be yourself. And then as you're modeling that for your clients, then that opens up, I'm sure, the trust for them to be freer to be themselves, which doesn't rhyme.
Absolutely. I wish it did.
Lena, can you share a bit with us about your journey to understanding your neurodivergence? Any key moments, realizations, anything that you feel happy to
Oh,
share here?
I would love to. As I think about my exploring my neurodiversity, I think about who I am at the center of things. I am an internalizer and I'm constantly reflecting. And with that said, I think about being autistic and being an ADHDer and how I'm so aware of so much that's around me, just constantly getting that input, managing that, and sometimes having difficulty with managing that. And I'm always taking away a vast amount of things every millisecond. And it can be really difficult to filter the things out that I'm more sensitive to, which depletes my spoon supply. And on that topic, as a Black AuDHDer, I actually have a theory that Black people don't even get the spoons to begin with. I I think that we're actually given a lot of forks. Sometimes we might be able to borrow some spoons, but I just feel like from the start they were already taken from us. And that's opening up a whole extra can of worms. And of course, I'd love to talk about it. I'm very passionate about it, but I'm going to park that there for the time being. And
We will come back to this. I think that fork, deeply interesting. What a metaphor.
yeah,
Keep going.
yeah. And yeah, so that's just a point of reflection, really, for the listeners, for the readers of the podcast. So back to me reflecting on anything and everything at any given moment. I think about exploring my own neurodiversity, and I think about the question why, not why am I neurodivergent, not a real surface level query. But why have I made the decision to explore at the age that I am, being in my mid 30s? And I don't mean that I've always felt that I was different. And well, I do. From probably from the time I was little, I've felt like I'm different. I've always been searching for the reasons why. I always want to know why. Um, and so I, yeah, so I mean, what is it important to me to find out who I am, right? My identity. So with that said, I've been starting, well, I'm on my journey, right? So I've started, I'm on my journey. And to really further understand, I needed to I need to reach and find my inner child again. I feel like I'd left her behind. I'd forgotten about her. I stopped thinking about her and really start my healing process for my inner child, for little Christina. And some things come to me when I'm actually not actively thinking about them. So, and a part of my healing journey, a part of healing my inner child is to do things that I I'm not always conscious to at the time. Um, so I was doing a bit of gardening. And for me, this is a big thing because for quite a while I had initiation paralysis. And thankfully, through understanding that I'm an ADHDer and that I've been able to take medication, it's really opened up my world to getting past that initiation paralysis a lot of the time now, which is fantastic.
You know what?
So,
And I'm just going to interrupt like a classic ADHD and just show you my Lego, like the flower Lego, which I totally, I initiated one of the stems the first week I was on ADHD meds.
mhm.
That was a while ago. That was a few months ago, but you're inspiring me to keep keep my Lego gardening going, keep going. I'm totally
okay. Look, I have other Lego kits and it usually takes me like months to finally get to them, but I totally get that. Yes. So as I was gardening, I was weeding, right? I was pulling out these gorgeous little plants. But we call them weeds. They're weeds. Um, and yeah, I thought I didn't want them to keep growing on my fence because it's not great, right? And I noticed just how strong they were and how long they were and how deep some of the roots of them were. And I was thinking, wow, I've been working on finding my inner child again, doing my inner child work. And I was reflecting on really how deep we need to go when we're doing this inner child work and we're needing to find our roots. And it's really about getting to the root of ourselves. And I just found it really intriguing because there's so much that I want to rekindle and I want to reconnect with myself, but it's also scary because there's a lot to unravel. So there's a huge part of the asking why, like asking those reasons, exploring neurodiversity. And it's going back as well to reconnect with my inner child because I am late diagnosed and I've been masking for a very long time since I was really young. And I actually need to do a lot of work so I can find out what little Christina needed and what little Christina wanted, and then integrate that with the person I've grown to be now. And, with those weeds, right? The, you know, they they might seem like they're noxious or they're unsightly and we want to pull them out. We're so quick to pull them out, but weeds, they pop back up. Like they are so resilient. And weeds, like I think of the dandelion and how much we can do with the dandelion. Like you can make tea out of it. You can make food from the leaves. You can make wishes. Like there's a whole cycle. And it even aligns with like the moon and the sun and the stars. And I'm so into that. And I thought these weeds, some of them are so strong, they're hard for me to pull out. And I thought being neurodivergent, like those of us that are neurodivergent, like we are the weeds, in the world, in our society. And sometimes people want to pull us out, but then it's like that reminder that, hey, I'm actually really awesome for the ecosystem. I have a lot to offer. I'm strong, I'm resilient. I might look different or, I am different to the flowers around me, but I still have a purpose. I still have a reason why I'm here.
I'm absolutely loving this metaphor. I'm seeing a million visuals of it. Like maybe a children's book of yours. Like this is, oh my gosh. And you can go further with it. Weeds might seem prickly.
Yeah.
Not seem so beautiful. They're not all like dandelions. And we can go with that. But
yeah,
we all have something to offer. Oh, I love this. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I could stick on this question forever.
It could go deep but
we might come back to it. The weeds will come up as a theme. And I could see, for those listening, I like to send questions ahead of time to my guests because that's what I like. A bit of preparation or an opportunity to. And I can see that Christina had written in there, "We are the weeds." And I was so curious. And now I'm so excited about this idea.
Yeah. Now you know. Now you get it. Hopefully.
I love it.
We are the weeds.
I almost feel like I want to recap these conversations in, a year or so. And even maybe we'll come back together and find out where are you at with your self concept and that exploration and, it may be very personal as well, but
how I started the book, is how I started writing the book. So many ideas.
Totally. It's fascinating. And I think the message there is, no matter when you were diagnosed, no matter like for everybody, no matter where you are in the journey, whether it's a formal diagnosis or not, it's a journey. It is going to be ongoing processing, possibly in loops and in cycles. And you've kind of reminded me that 2 years ago, when I went through my diagnosis, it was 2 years and 1 month ago. I
Yay.
was very reflective, going back to all these past experiences. It was like I was dissecting all these past experiences very methodically within
Yeah. Yeah.
You've reminded me that I've actually put that aside through the busyness of life and kind of left that for a bit. And I actually want to revisit it. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, that's all right. For me, it was so amazing to be, I wasn't wearing gloves when I was gardening. I was getting dirt under my nails, which, I mean, that's a bit of a sensory thing. I'm like, oh, but I was like,
I just
you
made
know what?
this too.
I need to feel the earth right now. I remember when I was a child and I'd dig through the soil and I'd find worms and slugs and, I just was like, this is little Christina. This is what I need right now.
Okay, you've gone to worms and digging. I have to tell you about the worm game.
Oh, please
and
do.
This is one of my personal narratives about how darn weird I was as a child.
Embrace the weirdness. Love the weirdness. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. At some point in my childhood, maybe around age 9 or so, I invented the worm game. I hate worms. I don't mind spiders. Don't even mind cockroaches that much. Don't love them, but like hard kind of critters are okay, but squiggly, squishy ones, absolutely not. No, thank you. And so the worm game goes like this. You dig in the soil until you find a worm and then you've lost the game.
Oh,
that's the game.
Oh, that's like the other game where if you think about it, you lose. And so I've just lost that game. So thanks for that.
Yeah. But I did it repetitively. And I'd have all these multiple rounds of like digging till I found a worm, freak myself out, feel like I've failed, I've lost it, and try again. Only goal is to lose it. There's a lot to read into that one.
Yeah, there is.
Oh my goodness. But anyway, let's come back to your story. And obviously, you live at the intersection of multiple identities. And I'd love to hear your personal experience about how you experience being both Black and an autistic ADHD. How has that shaped who you are? How has it impacted your life, your work? Anything you'd love to share around that?
Yeah, the way that I'm going to share and frame this is, to me, like the quintessential being Black, being autistic, being an ADHDer. I'm going to share it with you from like my sort of sensory experience. And, I think about, okay, like what is it to be a Black AuDHDer from my perspective, right? It's for me, like being a young child and my dad, who would often do my hair, like my mom would too, but I had a lot of hair. So, I think about like the smell from the hair grease that was used to, help to hydrate my hair and to keep it healthy. And I think about this feeling of moisturizer and Vaseline on my skin. And I think of like the most wonderful smells of soul food. Like it reaches the depths of your soul, right? From early in the morning, my dad would put on collard greens and smoked ham hocks on the stove, and it would just fill the home with like, it's almost like you could just jump back in time to my ancestors that would do the same sort of thing. And I also can hear my mom going, as she's shaking her head, because either it's something that's amiss or there's something that's hilarious, depending on the way that she's used it, that she's expressed herself. I also think of my mom saying Saturday for Saturday, because she was raised by her grandparents who were Southern in the US. So that was her dialect. And it was different from mine because I grew up in the Pacific Northwest of the US. But this is how deeply I relate, and my experience of the world is often through, like my senses and, what I see, what I smell, what I feel, even beyond that. Interoception, or sometimes lack of interoception, like reading my body signals. But, a lot of things I'm very like hyper aware to. I also think about the sound of my dad code switching. So, him speaking differently, and it sound differently when we were in some public spaces versus when we're at home. And I remember my dad has an engineer degree, and, he's just so great with math and science. And he's helped me with, understanding that when I was in school. And I think about the time when we went to my math teacher in high school, and my dad, he needed to show her how to teach the class, because when I came home confused, his engineer degree said otherwise. Yeah, I can understand why this is not being taught to you in a way, or even your class in a way that you're going to understand. So, how has it been for me being Black, being an AuDHDer, shaped who I am? Like, so that's how it's really that cultural aspect. And, when it comes to my work life, a lot of what I do, and in the name Free to Be Me speech therapy, like, I'm bringing myself into what I'm doing, right? Yes, I have my boundaries, right, with work, but also a lot of it is me. I'm showing up as me. That is why I decided when I started Free to Be Me speech therapy, which was only about 3 months ago, I went, I'm going to just make it known that I now understand I'm autistic. I now understand I'm an ADHDer. I'm building all of this into Free to Be Me speech therapy. So there's no guessing, there's no, walking around it anymore. This is me. Here I am.
I love those descriptions of your life, your experiences through the sensory lens, and other experiential aspects as well. And I guess I'm wondering, it's a thought experiment. I don't know how helpful it is or how accessible it is for you. So you're welcome to skip it, because I'm just thinking of it now. Can you imagine any of your experiences, and maybe even thinking about masking specifically, as a child, where you may have had to mask in a different way being Black compared to if you had been white, and, with your same neurotype, but without the knowledge, obviously.
Yeah, I think about certain ways that I would communicate things because of my tone. And that can be a common autistic experience, is, saying things the way that they are, right? And sometimes it comes out, just comes out, right? And it doesn't necessarily reflect the feeling behind it. But I know for me, because, being Black, if I said something in a certain way, then I would be portrayed, like in a really negative stereotype, right? That I was an angry Black woman, or Black, girl. And, it can to me not getting access to things that I need, or getting in trouble, like being sent to the principal, or having to speak to the teacher after class or after school. Those are the things I'd be really aware of. And it wasn't, and it was because I was Black. Like, I knew going into that, if I expressed myself and I said something a certain way, it maybe it's because I was uncomfortable with something that I was experiencing in the moment. I knew that I had to perhaps, say it with a certain tone, even though it's like, oh, I'd rather not. Otherwise, I just knew how I would be portrayed as being Black. So, I know that it's probably one of the very few privileges that I have, being able to mask, because not every autistic person is able to do that, right? But for me, a lot of times it is for safety reasons. Like, it is, it can be so that I keep my life, right? Like, yeah. So it's a needed thing, but yeah.
It's such a mixed blessing that you have that ability, and also, gosh, wouldn't it be great if none of us had to use it? And I would imagine that, from what you've described and what I imagine, as a white person, it's a nice thing to be able to change your tone and maybe shift it up so that other people may perceive you as a little bit gentler or something, but it may be non-optional for Black children.
Yeah, because the repercussions are they're just vastly different, right? It's not just like, oh, you're being rude. Yeah, it's beyond that. It's not they. It's just like my access to things might be cut off, and I very well need it. Like I think of medically, like medical appointments, right? Um, and I've unfortunately had it happen to me before. And I didn't know at the time that I was autistic. So yeah, it just, it compounds the situation, but I didn't get access to what I needed because I was seen as an angry Black woman. And it happens far too often in our world. And yeah, and depending on what it is, like that, it can be life or death. It can be life or death.
And that racialized prejudice is, I imagine in many cases it's very overt, and then in many other cases, I imagine it's covert.
Yeah.
It's just present. And I mean, I'm going to simplify it in a moment and just say it bloody sucks. Not okay. It's like, I'd like to shake the world up and stop that happening, because that is, I want to swear. I try not to swear on this podcast, but we should.
Yeah.
I see the world in sometimes very simple forms.
Mm.
It doesn't make sense when the world doesn't match that. And the way,
Yeah.
what I mean by simple forms is we are all humans. This is my simplistic, idealistic view of humanity. We're all humans. We're all valid. We're all worth equal humanness. One human. Awesome. Isn't that enough? But we just treat humans as humans. No, apparently it's not. The world is not so simple.
Yeah.
And I wonder then your experiences in your adult life and your professional world. So how has your experience been as a Black AuDHDer in speech pathology, in these professional fields?
Yeah.
Yeah, in other spaces in professional life.
Yeah. Speech pathology is it's a white majority profession. It's white dominated. So already, and especially in Australia, I don't know of many other Black speech pathologists. So it can feel very barren and desolate and unmarked territory. And like, there goes the tumbleweed, just tumbling across. But I don't let that stop me. I don't let that I'm not going to see it as a barrier. Instead, I'm carving my own path by doing what I know that I do best. And the ADHDer in me, like I'm taking those side quests, when I'm going with my interests because I have so many. I'm picking up the tools along the way, and and a part I'm building up my community. So I'm finding other Black AuDHDers that are exploring too. I'm saying, hey, come with me. We've got this. So yeah, I think also like when it comes to navigating the spaces, and I enter them sometimes, and some of my clients that I speak, that I support, and other people that I speak with, when you're in the neurodiversity affirming space, it can just be so amazing and so lovely. And sometimes you go outside of that space and it just forever like Lion King and Simba and Mufasa and Simba, I'm Simba and I'm asking Mufasa, like, what's that over there? I'm being told like, don't go over there. Like that is not neurodiversity affirming. Just, beware. So yeah. Sometimes I enter those spaces and I go, oh, cool. No, thank you. So it's really proceeding with caution. And especially for me, like PDA is strong, the injustice sensitivity is strong. So they do drive me to like test the waters a little bit and like read, take the measurements of the toxicity, right? So I'll then place a flag in those spaces that are contaminated, and I let other Black AuDHDers know that it's unsafe. The reason I do that is because in Black culture that I'm familiar with, at least being African American, a lot of the times we have to protect ourselves by telling each other about services or, things in general, like going to stores or anything that's unsafe, because it won't be shared, generally or vastly with everyone. So a lot of the information that we share, it's usually, very, very oral, like narratives, like we share like oral story, right? And that's just something for me that I culturally I know something that has to be done. So I'm very used to doing that. Um, and warning, it's just historical. Like it's historically done to warn others, because it's a necessity and it still is. So yeah, sometimes I'll kind of go and I'll kind of see what's this all about. Like sometimes in like Facebook groups and such, and then I get that real reality check. It's not as though I didn't really know, but it can be very very confronting and harmful, and especially when I'm not listened to, and I'll just say things, and well, cognitive dissonance that occurs.
I wonder if you have a bit of a personal guidepost for yourself when you kind of engage in these maybe mild to moderately unsafe spaces and challenge and advocate, and when you step back and say, this is not for me, I am out of here.
Well, I more recently have made a boundary for myself with, I think I this, like, it's just to be safe. Most Facebook groups I don't engage in. I don't kind of, I don't respond to things because I'm like, I already know how pattern recognition. I know how this is going to go. And I just don't want to put myself in harm's way. So with certain groups, the only interaction I'll do is, if I feel like this is going to directly come back and benefit me. That's like the boundary that I've placed for myself at the moment.
Totally fair. And it's such a burden on any marginalized person, let alone multiply marginalized person, to put it all on those individuals to say, you've got to do all the work. And I guess we didn't flag this as a question, so I'm just chucking it out here. Well, we sort of no, haven't really gone there. But is there anything that white folks like me can do better to be advocates and be voices and take some of the burden off people, Black people, when things come up in, we'll say Facebook groups for argument's sake, where a lot of trash comes up?
Yeah. I think the first step is really being, being ready to unlearn, to relearn, or to actually learn what's needed. It acknowledging that there are marginalized people that are constantly put in harm's way, and challenging implicit bias, things, ideas, opinions that you already hold, and may not really recognize that it is something that you actually do believe in to a certain extent. And I have put together a resource. It's a competency check, and it has some links too, like free. They're all free, and there's a starting point to check your implicit bias. Like it's an anonymous online sort of quiz, and there's several different areas that you can check your implicit bias about. Maybe the weight of people, or the sexual orientation of people, or people with darker skin tones. So I think it's going through this process of, I want to be on a learning journey, and I want to do better, right? I want to know better. I want to do better. So how am I going to do better? I'm going to take that time to start unlearning things and really, get to a point where I can be more confident that I can call these things out and I can advocate, because it's not the responsibility of the people that are already put in harm's way to continue like endlessly be fighting for, to be heard, to be, recognized and understood and have credit, going back to them. Like, it's just not fair. And it's that additional exhaustion. But, if we're going to really have people that are in, majority cultures and such to advocate, right, and to see something and go, oh, not only do I know that's not right, but I'm going to say something, because I very likely have a lot less to lose than this person that is multiply marginalized because they were, yeah,
That's another key point. It's not just about taking the burden off multiply marginalized people to do all that labor for themselves. It's actually less personal. If it's not community and you're there to support, to throw your support behind, or to call out racism or ableism or other, section of both of those and other, it's less of an emotional, probably physical toll as well. Yes, we all have to, and I think it takes a lot of humility. I think we'll talk about this more in a moment, like some of those other key ways that somebody who says that they are neurodiversity affirming, what that really means on a global scale. And a couple of sidebars before we dive into it. One sidebar is that resource you mentioned. I will link in the show notes so that people can get that. The other sidebar, which relates to, I think, the question we'll chat about in a moment, which is I started reading an article that popped up in My World yesterday, and I haven't finished it. In fact, it was only published 3 days ago. Is neurodiversity a global northern white paradigm? I don't know if you're aware of it.
No. Not yet, not 3 days, not yet, but please, pop it in the show notes, send it through. I'd love to have a look at it.
I will. It is looking like a really nice complement to our discussion and really interesting. I'm like about halfway through, but I will absolutely link to it. And I thought this sounds like up your alley for sure. And and it should be up the alley of everyone listening.
Yes.
And this is it. The first time I read this concept, it surprised me, and I thought, hang on, neurodiversity affirming and cultural competency, how do they even fit together? And then it
actually is a part of the neurodiversity paradigm. Like, if you look into it, it is listed. So that's why,
it's a fascinating question. I think it goes kind of an interesting direction in that article. Asking the question of, is this neurodiversity affirming movement basically a white concept? Is it completely erasing and missing the Black stories and their culturally diverse stories from around the world? Anyway, I'll let the article do its thing, and please, everyone, go check it out because it looks really fascinating. And then let you do your thing. So I want to hear, Christina, your concerns about when you see there are services out there that are supporting neurodivergent people. They claim to be neurodiversity affirming, and you notice a lack of cultural competency. What do you see that's missing, or where can people kind of check in with themselves and improve their cultural competency?
Yeah. So, I mean, being Black, being a speech pathologist, I've experienced it firsthand where, a place that I've worked at will say that they want to be able to say that, as a whole, they are neurodiversity affirming, and I've thought no, pump the brakes. You're not there yet. Because for me, as someone that's working as an employee or a contractor, I'm not even being honored, and I am very clear about the needs that I have, and they're not being met. At the time, I didn't say it was because I was autistic or an ADHDer, because I also, for safety reasons, like sometimes like you can have a thermometer of who are the people that I tell, how much do I tell them, right? I knew it wasn't safe for me too. So no, I didn't. But it's really obvious when, a place wants to, but already, internally they're not. So it, it's not okay if they want to broadly do it. It's a part of that like bandwagon or, providing that lip service and, the marketing to do so, but it's really all just for profit, right? And it's prioritized over people that they're purporting to help. So that's, or, like the language that's used will be ASD, or person first language. And, for someone that is autistic, and if that's the term that they use fully, that's how they want to identify. That's valid. That is okay. But the majority of the autistic community, say that identity first language is much preferred. And that's why I refer to myself as autistic, right? And also, ASD and autistic have the same amount of syllables. So we're not saving self time, by saying ASD. So if that helps, actually the person that did my autism, the formal assessment said that to me, and I said, absolutely true. Actions to do are to really affirm diverse cultural identity. It's being anti-racist. It's being inclusive of cultural differences. So it's taking into community language variations, valuing the linguistic diversity within disabled communities, within the BIPOC, that's Black, Indigenous, people of color, disabled communities, and the LGBTQIA plus community. Another way is we talk about in speech pathology a lot of time being client-centered and client-led, but inclusive in that is understanding that there's the intersection of race and neurodivergence and gender and other identities that shape each person's needs and goals. So let's not forget that all comes a part of being client-centered. And another way that I think about is a neurodiversity affirming service. It's going to actively challenge not only ableism, also racism, also sexism, also classism, and other systemic oppressions. So it's beyond just, okay, this person's seeking my services because they're disabled, so I'm just going to focus on the ableism. It's all the other things that come along with them that they also identify as. And so, it's just recognizing that these systems all intersect, and it very much is affecting the lives of. Like this is how neurodivergent BIPOC and LGBTQIA plus individuals experience their life. This is what they're coming to our services, with. So for us not to acknowledge or validate or, find out more about those areas of their identity, I feel it's just, we're falling short. We're coming up short.
Yeah.
And
it strikes me so much like a deeper way of being client-centered, not just we are client-centered and we've written it on our paper, just like we are neurodiversity affirming. We work with ASD children. There's these things that are very dissonant. And I guess thinking from a service level, is there anything, you have your own service, you created it, you grew it from the ground up. And is there anything that maybe you did in that process that you could suggest for other services so that they can be more culturally competent and have that as part of their support framework?
Yeah. From the very beginning, I think about like client intake and gathering that background information. And I have a question in my template that I use that is, it opens up by saying, are you okay if I ask you a bit about your cultural background, your values, I want to be able to understand, better and as best as, and support you as best as I can. And I know sometimes families will say, or like a client will say, "Oh no," like, "No, nothing." But so I'll add on to that by saying, maybe this is just values that you hold dearly within your household or within, you and your friends, in case, maybe they're not close with their family and this is an adult that I'm speaking to. So culture can be, as big or as small as we want to make it. Right. It's not always just, our cultural background because, for example, like our ethnicity, right, or regionally, but it can even be, within your friend group that, your friend group means a lot to you. And these are the values that you hold really, really dearly. And that could be some nice insight into a client's life. And, I'm still been able to acknowledge and affirm their cultural values. So yeah, I think it's a lot of time we hear like meet them where they're at. Like we need to meet our clients where they're at. And so it is including the cultural factors, right? Um, so thinking about like what protective mechanisms might they have due to oppression, like that can kind of be a little bit of a prompt to kind of remind you, like, consider this person who I'm supporting and who they are and they're coming to me. Because maybe they may not always know, which is okay, right? And they may not always want to share either. Maybe they do come from a culture where that's just not something that you do with someone that you don't know so well. Or perhaps, it might be going to an elder in their community to get that information. So yeah, it's really building up, firstly, like your knowledge of being able to get that knowledge from a client that you're supporting. Um, and how to do that is starting with addressing your own implicit biases, right? So that's that journey of unlearning in order to really learn, right? So it's the responsibility is first on us. Then we can go forward with supporting our client.
I love that way of framing. You're kind of coaching the individual to be able to identify their cultural backgrounds and to feel safe to share that with you and to check in with it. You're checking, do you feel okay to share this? And here's why it's important.
Yeah.
And I imagine for some people, maybe even for everyone to some degree, we sort of are inside our culture and some of us may not notice all the different cultures and subcultures and groups that we belong to because that's just our normal. That's what
especially from a majority culture.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So, and if someone says, either they don't know or maybe they're not comfortable to share, I would just leave it, they're building rapport and, observing, as as you're working with them, you can gather that information that way. But at least by asking the question, do you feel comfortable to share and giving a reason why, it just opens it up rather than, what are your cultural values? Yeah.
No, I really love that way of framing it. And it's part of that relationship building over time. Is there anything else that you would say? And I know we will actually talk about specific resources at the end. You've got a bunch and I will link all of those as well. But is there anything else that you wanted to kind of share with any therapists or professionals from majority cultures around ways that they can better support communities from people from communities and minority cultures in their practice?
Yeah, because I mentioned, that's just one question that I've built in and from the start in my intake process. So I get a new client. And by the way, you can do this with clients that you already have. It's okay to ask this question, even if you've been working with them for some time. I think, it's probably more likely than not going to be appreciated that, you're taking the time to want to get to know them more or more deeply. But in terms of, okay, if you're a professional that's from a majority culture, and you want to support clients and communities that are minority culture, I think it's really important to audit your resources that you're already using, and asking yourself, is whatever I'm using, like, it's take one of your resources for, I mean, meets your intake form, is this actually geared towards, is it inclusive of people with various, varying intersectionality, right? And then really, really committing to like regular and ongoing deep learning. We do our continued learning, our professional development. So, I would include this as a very key component, right? And I think other questions to ask is, the people that I'm supporting, like if they're from a minority culture, community, are they being exploited? Are they, are they benefiting from what I'm doing? Have they consented to, things that I'm wanting to do with them or follow up for them? Are they involved? Are they leading? Are they doing things on their terms? Really taking it back to them, because I think sometimes we want to do it all. And again, that is client centered, that's client led.
I think that's some really key reflection questions. And I love the prompt again. It's never too late to start that conversation or to bring that up with a client if that's sort of been missing from people's intake process. While we're on it, this is a little sidebar, I'll let it out. Well, why don't we go into 10, where you just share some of the resources, and then we'll flip back to 7.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just felt it flows.
Yeah.
No, that's some really, really helpful kind of big picture framework ideas. And I know people love resources like specifics, links, et cetera. Can you share some, and all of these that Christina shares, I'll either name, or if I can, I'll link to them in the show notes as well. So it's easy for you to pop over and find a bunch of people to follow, resources to find, etc. Share some of your favorites. So who can we learn from around sort of Black neurodivergent creators out there?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I am going to shout out to my other like Black AuDHDer. I call them like my sisters, because they've just helped me really like blossom. And there is just there's when you have have that connection with community, and especially when it's through like race on top of it, being in a minority race, like it's just so important. So Khadija has been, a wonder for me this year, and is just like an endless supporter. Chenai as well, and someone else that I have found really helpful information about the Black AuDHDer experience is Alina Gene-Lee on Instagram, and I think TikTok as well. I'm also going to share some decolonizing resources. So Dr. Jennifer Mullan has Decolonizing Therapy. Jamaica Pogue, apologies if I've mispronounced that. So that's that Neuro, that one. So Patricia is Pat Radical Therapist on Instagram. I'm very much, finding things through Instagram. And then Myisha T. Hill has Check Your Privilege. So those are 4 decolonizing resources. Other resources to name that I've found helpful, and I know there are many else out there, but I found helpful, Autism in Black. They're based in the US, offering really unique and valuable experiences of the autistic Black experience. And they have conferences throughout the year, and like online communities as well. Autistic, they're another online community, and they have cohorts every so often for 6 weeks called Autism While Black. And I participated in one recently. It was amazing. And we covered so much, from masking to finding joy to what our lives are like privately versus publicly. On Instagram, there's Black and Neurodiverse. Also, there's Divine Design Australia. So Mahali is connecting Black disabled women and non-binary folks in Australia and overseas. And also an in-person event is coming soon to NARM, in Melbourne, which is super exciting. Yeah, so awesome. And some books to also refer to are Afrotistic and Autistic and Black, Our Experiences of Growth, Progress, and Empowerment. And those are both of those titles are by I think it's Kala Allen and Omeiza. Excuse me if I mispronounced the name, but awesome resources. Start there.
Super, super helpful. Thank you for sharing. And I'm familiar with many and not all. So I'm also very, very excited to follow. And P.S. anyone listening, please also follow Christina. She's just, getting started. I'm feeling that the cogs are just they're clicking. I don't even know. The weeds are growing in the best way.
Yeah, there we go. Weeds are coming back. Yeah.
And you mentioned the Autism in Black conference.
Yeah.
And that is something you are going to be sharing a presentation at coming up soon.
Yeah. I am so thrilled about this. I when I was in burnout in April of this year, I attended the online conference and I was just so inspired to be connected with my community in a virtual space. And I made a goal for myself. I said, I want to be presenting at this conference. So the opportunity has come up and I submitted my proposal and it was accepted. So I'm going to be presenting at Autism in Blacks in our Black Girls and Women's Autism Summit. And I'll be celebrating the unique experiences of Black autistic girls and non-binary children who have special interests that differ from what's considered culturally typical. So this might look like skateboarding, anime, manga, K-pop, skiing or snowboarding, heavy metal. I mention these because these are a bit like what I was into growing up, and I didn't know other Black kids that were interested in them. So my focus will be on how we can better understand and support these special interests, especially through the lens of communication, cultural identity, and neurodiversity affirming approaches. And attendees, what I hope they'll get out of it is, we're going to walk through some practical strategies, foster the genuine connections, embrace the special interests, and create environments where Black autistic girls and non-binary kids can truly thrive. And I just see it all as really like it's shifting the perspectives and ensuring that everyone's free to be themselves.
Going to be amazing, important. I'm so excited. I registered for it, I think this morning.
Yes.
Before it really opened. Yeah. So I hope I typed my name right.
First thing.
But I will put the link to that in the show notes as well, because literally we are recording this on the 24th of September. I believe it was announced yesterday, was it?
I only just shared it, I think, last night. So
amazing.
Yeah,
and I'm actually getting, unlike me, I'm getting the podcast episode out either like today or tomorrow. So when you listen, all very close in time. Very unusual for me, but that's how we're rolling right now. So yeah, it's in October, the 9th of October is the event. So
yes, in US, so it'll be 20th for anyone in Australia.
Good point. Thank you. Time. Anyway, link will be in the show notes, so go follow and register for that. And if it's after the fact, I'm sure these sort of things will come up. So just go and follow a bunch of the resources that we're sharing in the show notes. Is there anything else, Christina, before we say our goodbye for now until our next chat?
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to share with parents or professionals who support neurodivergent children that we haven't covered yet?
I do. I opened up this podcast episode, talking about inner child work. And, I think about oftentimes, neurodivergent people, we have differences in our brains. Like our brains are different. Difference is okay. And so I think about, being little and being afraid of, a monster under the bed. If I dangle my feet over the bed, like the monster is going to just reach out and get me and take me under the bed with them. And I was thinking about that, right? Because, being a child, being fearful, And like, you know what? I think it's actually time to make friends with that monster under the bed. But I know that facing fear, it's not easy, and it's gradual steps, just like working through like cultural competency. It's gradual steps. So firstly, I want to say hello to that monster. Wave to the monster. I want to acknowledge the fear. Uh, I want to ask the monster as well. You know, what is it afraid of? Ask if it's also experiencing fear. And I want to ask the monster, like, what it wishes it could do if it didn't have to stay under the bed. That's similar to asking yourself, what did you wish you could do when you were little that you were told that you couldn't do? Right. Because the young ones that I support, oftentimes they've probably been told no. But just imagine, what was that experience like for you? Do we really want the same for them? And now imagine instead if you were encouraged, if you were supported to do that thing that you really wanted to do, and that would have brought you joy. So I say all of this because I think, it's time for us to stop being afraid of difference. And, and rather like we need to meet that difference with curiosity and invite the difference to play. It's not placing any limitations on the difference and really just embrace our differences.
That is such a beautiful point. Such a beautiful way to frame it. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
I'm actually seeing my quote of that, like your quote of that. It's beautiful. It's time, let's listen, let's learn, let's connect, let's get excited about our differences rather than other and afraid and step away from difference and not ignore difference either. I think our differences are what is so special, whether it's on one dimension or many dimensions.
Yeah, that monster is, probably scared too, right? Like that weed, is it really so unsightly? Is it really so bad?
It's actually a dandelion. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Okay. So it's different, but it's you don't need to be afraid of difference, right? Like let's just embrace difference. We don't need to change it.
I love it. Thank you, Christina, so much for sharing your insights, your perspectives, your visions, your story, and your vulnerability as well. Like, really, really appreciate it. And anyone listening, I think both of us would really welcome, any feedback, comments, questions.
I'd love that.
Priming us to have another chat in about a year and see where the weeds have grown to.
Yeah. Stronger than ever. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this so much. And I had a really wonderful time.
It's a real pleasure. Thanks, Christina.
See ya.
Thank you so much for sharing this space and time with me. Thank you for being open to learning and unlearning and to listening to the perspectives and experiences of neurodivergent folks. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with a friend, share a screenshot on Instagram, pop a 5-star rating and a review in your favorite app, and join me on Instagram and Facebook. I'm at play.learn.chat. Have a spectacular day.